Hello everybody and welcome back. In this video we are going to try and finish up the wooden body of our chest. Our very first step is going to be to clean up some of these edge loops, specifically the ones that we used to guide where we were putting our pips. So I'm going to go to Edge Select, and every edge that goes underneath one of these pips, I'm going to double click to select that edge loop and Control delete them. Alright, now that we've cleaned up our topology, I want to separate the lid from my body. And in order to do that, I'm going to go to Phase Select, go to my split view so that I can see it from the front, and I'm going to select all of the faces that would be on the lid of the chest. Once I've done that, I'm going to pop over to Edit Mesh, and I'm going to click Detach. And what that's going to do is it's going to separate the top from the bottom. It's not going to look like it did a whole lot, but if I double click one of these faces, you'll notice that it doesn't select the whole object. That's because these faces are no longer connected. However, if I go back to Object Mode, you'll see that they are still considered one object. Even if I pull the top off, go back to Object Mode, they are still one object. I don't want that, I want them to be separate, so I'm going to go ahead and go back to Face, select the pieces that are now detached, so for instance just my lid, and then I'm going to go to Mesh and Separate. And now these two pieces are properly separate objects. Now that we've separated our lid from our base, we're going to check over here in our outliner, pop open our groups, and see how our pieces are organized. So I have Poly Surface 1, which should be my lid, so I'm going to go ahead and double click that, name it Lid. And I've got Poly Surface 2, double click that, and name it Base. Now we also have these pesky transforms in here. I don't want them, so I'm going to select my two pieces, and I'm going to go to Edit, Delete by Type, History, and that's going to clear up those extra transforms we had lying around in our group. Now I still have one transform here. That is from when we mirrored the lid over to the other side, or rather the whole chest over to the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and select my mirrored copy, and again, Edit, Delete by Type, History, and that gets rid of my one other extra transform. Now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and name the group with my lid and base to Chest. And I also want to reorganize my pips, because it doesn't make sense to have them in left and right. It would be a lot more sensible to have them in top and bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and select some of my pips. Let's start with the ones up top. Just hold Shift and select the ones that belong to the lid. Double check against my reference, make sure I've got the right ones, and hit Control G. Let's go and find it. It's in here. And I'm going to name this Top. Should really have selected the ones on the other side. Let's go ahead and select those two. Oop. And we'll just middle click them and drag them into my top group. So now those are all of my top pips. I'm actually going to go ahead and rename this Pips Top. And then we're going to also go ahead and select the bottom pips. 1, 2, 3, 4. Control G. And name this one Pips Bottom. Now I'm going to go ahead and make another group, selecting my base and my Pips Bottom. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to click one and then Control click the other one. If instead you use Shift between them, you'll select everything in between. So we don't want to do that. So one more time, click one and Control click the other, and Control G. And I'll name this one Top. Nope, this one's Bottom. And one more time, Pips Top, and the lid, Control G, Top. And then select both groups and middle click and drag them into Chest. So now we have our chest group with the top and bottom pieces. We can select our top, move our pips around, and we can select our bottom and move our pips around. Note that if you just select the base, then you won't select the pips because it's inside of this group. If you want to move the pieces together, you must select the group. So now we've got our chest group. I'm going to go ahead and middle click and drag it out of my P cylinder 1 group and delete that. And one more time before we continue, I'm going to pop open all of my groups, select all of my stuff in them, and edit delete by type history. Alright, now that we've done that, I'm going to go ahead and Control Alt S. Increment and save, please, yes. And I'm also going to go ahead and delete these two empty groups and my old mirror. And we'll re-mirror the chest again once we're done with the body. For now though, let's go ahead and fill in the inside because we have separated the lid and base, so it would be nice to have something on the inside that we could see from out here. We're going to go ahead and create a new cylinder, rotate it 90 degrees, and we're going to set it up the same way we did when we started the project. I'm going to go ahead and add 8 subdivisions, make it 22 wide by 8 radius, rotate it 22.5 degrees, and move it up to match our lid. But once we've got it in position, let's go ahead and swap to a side profile real quick. We actually want to scale it down a bit because we want to have some thickness in between the walls of the wood. So we're going to go ahead and scale it down a bit and take a good look at it and make sure we've got a good amount of space in between the two pieces. Then I'm also going to go ahead and add a height subdivision. Pop that up to 2, split it in half, go to face select, and cut the half that we're not using. Same thing with the bottom, go ahead and delete all of that. Select these 4 boundary edges and extrude them down. Go to scale, scale them flat, select the center vertex, and vertex snap it up so that it's nice and flat, the same way we have the edges on the outside of our box. Now we're also going to go ahead and select these bottom 4 edges one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oop, not that one. Go to vertex snap, hold V, and snap them up to match the base of our box. Or the base of our lid, rather. Now that we've gone and done that, it's time to combine the inside and the outside. So go to Object Mode, whoop, select the 2 pieces, and Mesh Combine. And lastly, we need to fill in this gap between the 2 of them around here, so we end up with a rim. So I'm going to go to Edge Select, zoom in, and I'm going to double-click this boundary edge, double-click this boundary edge, and when I'm trying to bridge it, it's going to give me an error. And if we pull this off to the side, we can see that the issue is that they don't have the same number of edges. That's actually pretty obvious if we rotate around the object and take a good zoom in. On this side of the box, let's go ahead and go back to perspective view so we can see it a little better. I have a single edge on the inside and 3 edges on the outside here. On this face, I've got 2 edges on the inside, but I have 4 on the outside, and same thing on the back, 2 to 1. So we need to make sure that all of those numbers equal out. And the best way of doing that is with our multi-cut tool. So let's try and get the inside matching as much as possible to the outside. Let's start by doing the bit where we broke up those triangles. So I'm going to use my multi-cut tool, Control Shift to draw straight lines, hit enter, and cut my triangles in half. Delete the diagonals, and that's looking a lot more like the outside. But we're still missing these 2 edges from the outside, so we're going to go ahead and just draw those in. let's go to our side view so we can see what we're working with. We want to create this pattern on the inside here. So I'm going to grab my multi-cut tool, zoom in, and it looks like this cut is supposed to be about halfway up. So I'm going to hold shift, and that's going to give me my black dot. It's not very visible, but I'm just going to click in, and there's my point. So 50 there, 50 there, and then somewhere in here, there's this vertex. So I'm going to start by connecting it up there for now. Same thing on this side, 50, 50, hook that up. And then we need edges that go horizontally. So I'm going to go 50 and 50, hit enter, and select these two vertices and scale them in. And now we have a similar trapezoid shape on the inside of our box as we do on the outside. And all of our vertexes will line up. And now I should be able, in theory, to select these 4 bottom edges and these 4 bottom edges and bridge them together. But we might run into an issue. So let's bridge them, and indeed we do. We get this weird X shape.
And the reason that this happens is because they're facing the same way. So if we move the inside slightly down, we can see that the inside of both pieces is black. If we rotate towards the outside real quick, we can see that the gray faces are facing the same direction, and if we want to bridge them, they need to be facing opposite directions. So in order to fix this problem, we're going to double-click the inside of the box, go up to Mesh Display, and click Reverse.
Now the inside of my box is gray, and the outside of my box is gray, which means that all of my faces are pointing out. So I can now go ahead and select these 4 edges, and these 4 edges, and bridge them. And you can see that the grayness of my faces follows around from the outside of my box onto the rim of my lid and into the inside of my box. Now let's continue bridging and adding in multi-cuts. So we need 2 edges on this back edge. So grab our multi-cut, hold Control, click in an edge, and then we can bridge these 2 together. There we go. And now let's handle the front. But if you remember, on the front, we have this extra lip. So we need to go ahead and account for that. But this edge lip isn't facing down, it's facing sideways. So the way we're going to account for that is we're going to think about which way this edge would connect to the rest of the model, and the way it would connect to the rest of the model is horizontally, not vertically. So we're going to go ahead and add an edge loop, not to the inside of our lid, but to the lip of our lid. I'm going to go ahead and go to Object Mode, Control 1, so that we can isolate and see what's going to happen. Grab my multi-cut tool, and I'm going to hold Control, and I'm going to draw a edge on the inside of my lip. So now I've got that edge loop added in, and I'm going to go ahead and go to Edge Select, and I'm going to bridge this lip edge with this lip edge. Now we've got this little shape right here. If we wanted to straighten that out, we can grab this middle vertex, hold V, and match it up to the other vertex. And now we have 1, 2 edges lining up with 1, 2 edges, so we can bridge those closed. And now we've successfully built the inside of this half of the box. We can go to Object Mode, and we can mirror it over. So, Mesh, Mirror. And you might end up with this error where it suddenly turns lime green. That is a UV error or a texture error. We've got ways of fixing that. Let's go ahead and undo. The very first thing we're going to do is the whole lid is going to be one piece. So we're going to go back to Mesh, click Open Our Mirror checkbox, and make sure that we are combining with the original. close that menu now that we've fixed that setting. Double click our lid, hold right click, go down to assign existing material, and set it back to standard surface. Now that we've done that, let's go ahead and fix up all of these issues we have on the right in our inputs panel. Go to edit, delete by type history, and then we're going to Control Alt S, make a new increment and save, and try mirroring it one more time. And now we have, didn't take into account that we changed the setting in the mirror menu. Let's undo that one more time. Let's pull up our mirror menu, combine with original, mirror. There we go, now we have a singular lid piece. Let's look at where it is in the outliner. Right in here. Let's go edit, delete by type history, rename it back to lid, and we've got this empty lid group in here. Let's try and edit, delete by type history one more time. That isn't removing my transforms, so we're going to go ahead and select the whole chest object, select everything in our scene, edit, delete by type history. There we go, that's gotten rid of all of our extra transforms. And now we can move our lid back into our top group. Let's hit Control 1 and figure out what these extra cylinders are. They're from our bad mirrors. We're going to go ahead and move them out of the way and delete them. So we have our completed lid. Let's build the base now. Now before we build the base, I'm actually going to add in one more reference image because I want to look at what it looks like from the inside. So we're going to go to our front view, and I'm going to go to View, Image Plane, Import Image, and I'm going to pull the 3.4 open. Let's go ahead and scale that up. Put it over here for now. Go back to looking at it over here, move it back a bit. Alright. Now, inside of the base, let's go back to our perspective view. We can see that there's this little lip built into the inside. So we're going to have to do a couple of extra steps before we combine the inside to the base. Luckily, the inside of the box is a cube. So here's a cube. Let's go ahead and scale it up. We'll line it up so that we give it a little bit of give on the bottom and a little bit of give on the sides. Let's scale it out widewise, and we can actually see, we can compare it to the lid up top. It's a little easier to do if we do it in a top view, so let's go to top, hit 4, select my cube, and we want to make sure that it fits inside of this lip right here. This right angle is the inside of our lid lip, so we want to make sure that our cube fits snugly in that. So let's go ahead and scale it out just a bit more. There we go. Now let's come back to my side view and our perspective view, and let's cut our box in half. Delete the unnecessary faces, delete this top face, and move these 3 edges with vertex select down to the top of our base. Now, same thing as before, we want to bridge these 2 pieces together, so we need to combine them first. Mesh combine, and then we need to make sure that the inside of our box is gray. So we'll double click the inside, mesh display, reverse. Now all of the edges are facing the right way, and we can start adding in the extra edges. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is actually take into account this raised part of my lip. So I actually want to have some faces on the side here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this face, and I'm going to pull it in a little bit. Then I'm going to select this top edge and extrude it out again. And this is going to be this little lip right here. let's go to our top view and see how far we can push it. Select my cube. Let's go find those edges we just made. So this is the edge we just extruded, and I'm going to make sure that it is just as close as to this edge as I can get. If this were a real physical model, they wouldn't be perfectly one on top of each other because there would be friction between the pieces, which is why I'm not just vertex snapping it over. Instead, I'm just giving it a little bit of lip. Alright, now I have the same thing in the back, actually. So let's go ahead back to our perspective view, rotate back around. We need to give a little bit more space on the back of the model. So I'll go ahead and select this face, and also this face. What's the best way of doing this? Actually, I've decided that the best way of doing this is to just move this face and then adjust this singular vertex. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this in a little bit, go to vertex select, select this vertex, hold V and move it so that it snaps to that edge we just moved, and then we'll hit spacebar again after we extrude this edge back, just like that. Go back to our top view and see how much give we have up here. Oh, I'd actually like to match this up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select, I'm going to go ahead and select these edges here and drag them this way so that this ends up looking square. Alright. And in fact, I'm also going to go ahead and select this edge, or this face rather. I'm going to pull them in just a bit more because if we look on our perspective view, let's go back to our reference, we can see that the interior of the back has this little lip. So we could either pull this out and then extrude the bottom half in, or we can just extrude the top half out. Let's do that instead. Add a multi-cut. I'm going to decide to line it up to this edge right here. Double click it, hold V, line it up there. And I want to extrude this out to match the reference. Let's see how that looks from the top. Looks good. Alright. However, now that I've extruded that bit from the top, if we look over here, let's get a good zoom in, we can see that there is an n-gon, or at least what appears to be an n-gon. The truth is that if I hit the 3 key, our smooth preview, it looks like a bit of a mess, because we've got this face in between, if I go to 4 view, the pieces that I just extruded out, and the sidebar. We need to go ahead and fix that. So I'm going to go back to my 5 view. I'm going to grab the multi-cut tool. I'm going to zoom in, add an edge loop that goes this way, double click it, hold the V key, and move it to snap to that vertex. Then I'm going to go to my face select. I'm going to go to smooth preview, and I'm going to delete these two faces, which are the ones in between that cut. Delete them. Go back to smooth preview, looking a shred better. And now we're going to use another tool. I'm going to go to vertex select, and I'm going to go up to my display menu. And I'm going to go to my heads up display just under the grid, and I'm going to look for my poly count. I'm going to click this little checkbox, and now in the top left of my viewport, I have these numbers. So these numbers indicate the number of vertices, edges, and faces that are in my scene and on my selected object, and then the ones that I currently have selected. So if I click on any of these vertices, I have a single vertex selected, and that should be true for any vertex that I choose to select. However, if I click and drag over a vertex, note that it still says 1, but if I click and drag over this intersection, it says 2. That's what's causing this weird glitch in smooth preview. So in order to fix that, we have our two vertices selected by just clicking and dragging over them, and we're going to go to our merge tool, which is right next to our bevel tool, and you'll notice that it goes down to 1. If it doesn't go down to 1, then simply increase the distance threshold until it does.
But be very careful with the merge tool. If you have the wrong number of vertices selected and you increase your distance threshold, you can end up with pinching like this.
So always make sure that you only have the two vertices you want to merge selected. Alright, now let's go ahead and rotate down here, because we also have this vertex to worry about. Let's hit our 4 view, make sure we're not selecting any extra vertices. Note that it still says 2. Click our merge tool, down to 1. Let's go to smooth preview. And now we don't have that weird gobbledygook, and it blends nicely. Alright. Now we're also going to go ahead and select and delete this face, because when we mirror this over, we don't want there to be any sneaky faces in between. Now let's go ahead and continue Control 1. Let's go ahead and continue bridging the inside to the outside of our base. So I'm going to go ahead and select these two edges and these two edges and bridge them. Seems alright. If we want this curve to be a little smoother, we can go ahead and select some of these vertices and ease that transition between the two. That feels a little better. And then do the same thing the other way. Now here we've got a situation where we've got 4 edges that are fairly widely spread out on the outside, but we've got these 3 over here that feel a little bit bunched up. So we're going to go ahead and add some edge loops to the inside as well as the outside to even this topology out. So I'm going to go ahead and add in edge loops that feel like they would line out with the outside, and then rotate to the outside and add in edge loops that feel like they would line up with the inside. 1, and I'm actually going to go ahead and do that. And then let's try and bridge them together. So these two and these two, bridge, and then these 4, bridge. And then we're going to go ahead and select some of these edges again to go ahead and ease up this shape up here. So let's go ahead and select all of these. Deselect that one. There we go. Same thing with these. There we go. Let's rotate around to the bottom. Same adjustment. There we go. And now we've got the front of the box. We see that we have this lip, same thing we had on the roof. So we need to grab our multicut tool and add an edge loop that goes around the inside of our lip. I'm gonna go ahead and add it in there. Bop. And we're going to go ahead and bridge these 2 edges together. And then let's count our edges. We've got 1 and 2, and 1 and 2. Let's go ahead and bridge them. And there we go. Now we also want to make sure that this is fairly flat. So I'm going to go ahead and select all of these faces. All of the faces that make up the lip. And we're going to scale them flat. So let's look at it from the side profile. Control 1. We can see that it's not perfectly flat, so we'll just go ahead and make it nice and flat. Same thing with the lid. Go to our perspective view. Select all of these bottom lip faces. Go to R and scale them. Woo! Accidentally selected too many edges. What edges did I accidentally select? The ones up here. Interesting. Let's go ahead and deselect the roof. So if we zoom in, we've selected these faces on accident. So So I'll have to go ahead and hold Control and deselect them. Let's go into perspective view so we can see what we're doing. Deselect all of these faces we selected on accident. Control, Control, Control. And one more time, scale them flat. There we go. Now let's come back to our base, because there's one more extrusion we need to do, and that is adding this little lip, which we prepared for earlier by adding in these extra faces. So we're just going to go ahead and select them and extrude them up. Let's make sure we've only got the right faces selected. Check our top perspective, make sure they fit snugly. I think we're good, so let's go ahead and Control E and extrude them up. Just a bit. Delete the faces where we're going to be mirroring the object. And let's also go ahead and add one edge loop around the base of the rim, one along the front, and I want to select this edge and move it back, just to get the incline we have in the reference. Then we're going to go to Object Mode, Mesh and Mirror. And just in case, we're going to delete by type history and Control Alt S. Now, one final step to finish up the wooden base of our object. We're going to go ahead and move our lid back down. Select it from the outliner, hold X, move it down onto the grid, and we're going to be adding in the slits that we have in our reference. Let's move this one out of the way for now. And now let's rotate around and grab our multi-cut tool. And we're gonna zoom in, hold Control, and add in some cuts. You can hold Shift if you want them to be all even, so let's go 90 and 90. Rotate around to the top. Control Shift. 90 feels a bit big up here, so let's go 70 as a guideline, and then another one closer. And then we can delete the guide edge. And then same thing up top. We want it to be centered. Let's double check. Yes, we do have one up top. Good. So we'll grab our multi-cut tool again. And this time, let's do the 10, 10, and then another one a little closer. 30 both ways seems fine. Delete the guideline edges. And we could even delete the edge in the middle. Now we have all of the edges we need to extrude, so we'll go to Face Select, select those slits, and Control E them in. But we want to make sure that they're not clipping through the inside of our box. So if I go ahead and grab my top, let's go move it up. Make sure very quickly. Alright. We could check from the wireframe, but just in case. Let's go back to 5 view and move it back down. Same thing with the front of the base. Select these faces, Control E, and push them in. And again, we don't want them clipping into the box, so we'll just go ahead and pop our lid back off one more time. And it looks like we're good to go. Control Alt S.
And that is finished enough for now. We're going to be fencing it in a later video, but up next we are going to be building the latches and hinges and handles.